An extension earlier this year solidified Kalen DeBoer's place in Tuscaloosa. What does he do with the extension that he gets? And how are expectations going to continue to be a standard as the Alabama Crimson Tide prepares for the 2026 college football season? Welcome on in, ladies and gentlemen. This is our State of the Program series, this time going to Tuscaloosa to preview the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm your host, as always, Lucas Hill. Make sure y'all do us a favor. Y'all hit the like, share, and subscribe down below. Turn on the bell notifications so that you are notified every time we go live, post a new video, or post a new short here on the Southern sports scene. As always, we want to thank our proud friends and partners over at Frostbuddy. Going over to frostbuddy.com. Get yourself a nice little tumbler, mug, cup, whatever it needs to fill your beverages up. Use code SSS15 to get 15% off your first purchase. Also, thank you to our friends over at Check Nutrition. With 20 grams of protein, 1 gram of fat, 1 gram of sugar, you can get every day started with a healthy, hearty cup of coffee. Just use the link below. Get yourself 10% off. Wyatt Fulton, Tide 100.9, and host of the Deep South College Football Show as well. Wyatt, good to see you, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Appreciate you for having me, man. It's going to be a lot of fun talking a little Alabama.
Let's go ahead and let's kind of talk about the biggest offseason move that Bama has made. You extend Kalen DeBoer this past a couple months ago. I think that it generated a heck of a response. I think it was a statement that was made by Alabama administration that says that DeBoer is our guy. We have the right pieces in place to be a contender consistently, pick up where his predecessor left off. But you're obviously entering a new era, and it's clear that Bama is not the Bama that it was during its early dominance in the 2010s. You have the rise of other schools that are going to be able to pay for student athletes. You have a much more competitive SEC than you had back in the 2010s. I'm not saying that the SEC wasn't competitive then. I think Alabama is facing something they haven't had to face in a while, which is honestly a team that can be as dominant as Bama is in Kirby Smart and what Lane Kiffin has built in two programs with Ole Miss and LSU, and even with the East in the with the SEC as a whole, they're getting so much better. And with the money that's coming into these programs, it's going to get tougher for Bama to go back to its former dominance. So, talk to me about the signing a couple weeks or months ago, however long it was, and just kind of what do you think led to this decision? What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, Kalen DeBoer signing that contract extension, it increases his buyout. So, if crap hits the fan and Alabama decides, you know what, we did make a mistake, he'd be owed, I think, $70 million if something went down after this upcoming season. But what this was is it was an endorsement from the coaching staff or from the athletic administration, athletic director Greg Byrne, President Moeller here at Alabama. Hey, we think we've got the guy in Kalen DeBoer. And between the ups and downs that you've seen, some of the high highs of beating Georgia a couple of times and the low lows of, getting blown out by Oklahoma, losing to Vanderbilt, getting blown out by Florida State and Indiana as well. Regardless of whatever you think about Kalen DeBoer as a head coach, this was an endorsement from Alabama's athletic department. We've got our guy. And 2 years ago, he had Washington in the national championship, or I guess 3 seasons ago now. He had Washington in a national championship game, 2 seasons off, winning 3 ball games with a lot of those same players that were on that roster. So Kalen DeBoer is a good football coach. I think they've got to kind of understand, hey, the SEC is a lot more physical, right? When you've got the Georgias, when you've got, the Brent Venables at Oklahoma, the way Texas is able to run their offense with that combination of power and finesse with what Sarkisian's able to do. You mentioned LSU. Ole Miss has also been really, really good the last couple of years. I don't expect Ole Miss to take a massive step back this season with Pete Golding, with the pieces that they've got. So it was an endorsement, yes, from the Alabama athletic administration. He is our guy. But at the same time, you understand changes have to be made. And Alabama's made significant changes on the coaching staff the last couple of seasons. They've made significant changes in how they acquire talent. A lot of people have made fun of Alabama. Hey, you're taking 3 stars now. Well, look, the 3-star quarterback, Keelan Russell, turned into a 5-star, the number 1 quarterback in the country, and could very well win that starting quarterback job this upcoming season. So Alabama is really trusting its recruiting staff and its evaluations to go out and get these types of guys. And not only Keelan Russell, London Simmons, who was a 3-star out of Mississippi. They went out, they go get him, and he's starting by week 2 due to some injuries that that you faced with Tim Keenan and Jeremiah Beeman at the start of last season. But even still, he provided really good reps. So I think Alabama, they're trusting their evaluations, they're trusting their staff, and so far it is starting to pan out for Kalen DeBoer in Alabama.
What have you seen from, because you mentioned briefly the quarterback, Austin Mack and Keelan Russell. What have you seen from, or at least have heard from what he said about the quarterback competition? Who do you think is going to get the starting role taking over for a guy that obviously leaves a big hole in a top 15 pick in Ty Simpson?
Both these quarterbacks are very capable. I think Austin Mack is probably the safer option in the idea that he's going to run this offense in a very safe manner. But obviously, you don't win football games by playing safe. You got to take a risk here or there. And I think that's what Keelan Russell does really well, is that risk-benefit analysis, basically. Hey, can I fit this ball in this window? Should I try to fit the ball in this window? Or do I maybe just need to go take this check down? You know, John Gruden said it in his interview with Ty Simpson. You don't go broke by making money, right? So if you're willing to take your check down and, you know, get 5 or 6 yards as opposed to trying the big play and ending up with a turnover, you know, you're not going to go broke making money. So I think that's what Alabama's kind of facing. They'll be in good hands either way, but I do think Keelan Russell provides that extra gear that this offense might need in order to be competitive, not only in the SEC, but, you know, if you are starting to talk about the college football playoff, you need that game changer at quarterback. We saw it with Trinidad Chambliss and Ole Miss. We saw it with Fernando Mendoza and Indiana. You need a game changer at that quarterback position, no matter what at this point in the world of college football. And I think Keelan Russell has the higher ceiling. I think Austin Mack's got the higher floor. So if Keelan Russell can continue to limit the mistakes, sounds like he was doing that in spring, limiting mistakes, but adding on explosives on top of that. If that is the way things continue to trend in summer 7-on-7, summer workouts, fall camp, I do think Keelan Russell ends up winning that starting job.
Do you think that this could end up being a kind of similar to, I wouldn't necessarily say similar, kind of similar to what happened with Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa?
I don't think so, just because Jalen Hurts was a dynamic playmaker in his own way, and Jalen Hurts had a full season of starting experience under his belt prior to Tua Tagovailoa arriving to campus, whereas Austin Mack has, you know, never started a game. Yes, he was the guy that came in the second half of the Rose Bowl, but at that point, Alabama had given up. Let's call a spade a spade. Indiana made Alabama quit in that game by the second half. So at that point, it's just get out of the Rose Bowl. Just get out of here at this point. We need to get home at that point. And so I don't think it's that necessarily style. I would almost equate it more to what if Keelan Russell does win the starting job. I would almost equate it more to what happened with Mac Jones and Bryce Young, where you've got this very capable starter, somebody who plays the game very, very well, maybe on a more mental side of things, not quite as athletic as the guy behind him, but he's holding off that 5-star. Now, for Mac Jones, it worked out in a national championship and a first-round pick. For Ty Simpson, it worked out to a playoff berth, a playoff victory, and becoming a first-round pick. So I think you could see Alabama elevate its quarterback play in 2026 compared to what Ty Simpson in 25. And if that's the case, I mean, Ty Simpson was the engine that pulled that Alabama offense along. I mean, he fought, clawed, scratched his way towards leading Alabama to a 10-win regular season. He was dealing with an elbow injury, a back injury, and gastritis by the time the SEC championship rolled around, and still went out and won a college football playoff game on the road, coming back from 17 points down. So with no run game, with a run game that was at best lethargic and at worst abysmal last season. So if the offensive line and the run game can at least get better, because it's very hard to go from rock bottom to even worse than that. So if the offensive line and the run game can get a little bit better and you elevate your quarterback play, I think Alabama should be sitting in a decent spot this season.
That's a big thing that Alabama has to focus on this year. It's not just from an offensive line perspective, it's on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I thought they got pushed around a little bit last year, especially down the stretch in SEC play against Georgia and Oklahoma, which is a good example. Even against a team like Auburn. I mean, they did.
Yeah.
I mean, they get pushed around and that point in the game, they're literally not that far off from losing that football game and not even playing Georgia for an SEC championship. And then I think the biggest example is when people realized this team is not as physical as we thought they were last game of the season.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
both lines of scrimmage, they've got to get better. And you mentioned the one-score games. I mean, Georgia round one, Missouri was a one-score game. You mentioned the Oklahoma loss that they did end up going and losing. They lost to Auburn. So Alabama they've made a lot of clutch plays from guys like Ty Simpson, Isaiah Horton. Dejon Lee had the game-winning interception against Missouri there. Even though the scoreboard doesn't reflect it, I think that Tennessee game was a lot closer than people remember it being, thanks to what Xavier Brown did on the goal line at the end of the first half. But yeah, Alabama's got to get better on both lines of scrimmages. And so they've added some mass. They've added, Terrence Green, a big body defensive lineman from Oregon, Kedrick Bingley-Jones from Mississippi State, two guys who are over 310 pounds that are going to try to man the middle of that defense for Alabama's defensive line there. Devon Tompkins from USC is a bigger body guy that I think on passing situations, he'll probably play inside. And then when you need, some bigger defensive line groups to try and stop the run, he'll kick outside and play kind of your defensive end spot. Yeah. So versatility has been a really big thing for Alabama's defensive front here through the transfer portal and spring practice. And then on the offensive line, you add 11 new guys to that room after losing 11 guys effectively via the transfer portal in the NFL draft. And so only returning starters, Michael Carroll. He provided some of that physicality last season, but freshman players make freshman mistakes sometimes. And he had a couple of those freshman moments, but I think that will be better for him in the long run, getting those starts later in the year. But he may be playing a new position. He started at right tackle at the end of last year. He may get kicked to right guard now. And so a lot of moving pieces along both lines of scrimmage for Alabama.
I think the strength of this Bama team from a whole is something that I'm really confident in, because I'll look at receivers and I'll look at running backs. I see, okay, they have a lot of potential, but you have a lot of moving pieces that were pretty much up and down this past year. I look at the linebacker and DB rooms, and I think that's pretty much the strength of where Bama's is going to have. You talk about guys like Yanze Pierre, who I think is going to be a top 50 pick in this upcoming draft. I think he's got that much of a high ceiling. I look at guys like that are coming back, Keon Sabb, Xavier Brown, like you already mentioned. Bray Hubbard should be one of the best safeties in all of college football. We'll see if he ends up getting to an NFL, being a top 50 guy. But when you look at where this back seven is at this point in time, what's something that you're excited to see, whether it be an improvement or a guy that you think could be a breakout star from that part of the field?
Yeah, the secondary is going to be the strength of this team. If this secondary plays to their potential, this will be the best secondary in the country, with Xavier Brown returning for his third season, Keon Sabb and Bray Hubbard back as that starting safety duo for Alabama this upcoming season. They were the starters last year, and in 2024, Keon Sabb was a starter. He ends up breaking his foot against Tennessee, and in comes Bray Hubbard. And that's where we learned what Bray Hubbard was the second half of that 24 season. And so they're back as your starting safety duo. Dejon Lee, a very rangy corner who's got incredible size and athleticism and has already been put in tough situations, right? He got, had some freshman moments against Florida State early. He had the game-winning interception against Missouri, but then he had some freshman moments again against Indiana in the Rose Bowl. So a very up and down season last year for Dejon Lee. But again, same as Michael Carroll, if you're getting those kinds of reps early as a freshman, it can only help you as you get older, as you progress throughout your career. So he's back as your starting corner this season. I'm interested what Alabama does in their kind of star Alabama calls it husky. Most people recognize it as slot cornerback. Alabama calls it husky. Saban called it star. They look for kind of some bigger body defenders in that area, and I think that's what Red Morgan can provide. But that's just the starting unit. You look down this line here. I mean, Ivan Taylor's a player that is probably going to play significant snaps, yes, but he's a backup on Alabama's roster. He'd probably start at 90% of other colleges in the country. Xavier Mincy is a former 5-star corner that converted to safety that is now getting some meaningful reps for Alabama behind Hubbard and Sabb. You look at Drake Kirkpatrick Jr., a very hard-hitting player, somebody who knows what the physicality level has to be because of who his dad is, and played for Saban at Alabama there. So, and that's just the safety unit, right? I haven't even mentioned 5-star corner Jordan Edmonds, who signed with Alabama this past cycle and was getting rotational reps on first-team defense during the spring game. Carmelo O'Neal as well, the Mercer transfer defensive back, who can play corner, can play Husky, can play safety as well. So when you look at the talent and the depth in this secondary, I'm really excited to see how they kind of evaluate and maneuver those guys, because Alabama, we know they like to rotate a lot in both on defense. And so looking at that secondary, you've got all the talent in the world. How are you going to get these guys on the field? And so I even think for 2027, when you look at, everybody makes a big deal about returning starters. So Alabama's going to be hurting in that department in the secondary next year, but all those guys I just mentioned are going to play meaningful reps in big-time ball games. And so Alabama will not be hurting for reps. They'll be hurting for starts when you look at 27 in the secondary, assuming everybody who can come back does end up coming back.
Do you see Jaira Edwards kind of playing a tweener between safety and kind of a guy that could play some linebacker too?
Yeah, I think he's somebody. I can't believe I forgot to mention Jaira Edwards, but yeah, he's a guy that can be a heavy hitter for Alabama. They were using him a little bit as kind of that box safety role during the spring scrimmage that we were able to see. And so I think he's another guy that, whether it be, stepping in at linebacker a little bit and maybe some more six defensive back looks, or maybe even stepping down into that star Husky slot type of role that can help with run defense. Because that's a big thing for Alabama, is that slot guy's got to be able to defend the run very well. We saw Brian Branch do it at Alabama under Nick Saban. We saw Malachi Moore do it under both Nick Saban and Kane Womack. We saw Red Morgan do it last year. And so you need a bigger body defender that can go down and stop the run, but is also really good in coverage. And I think that may be where Jaira Edwards can really shine early, is pushing Red Morgan for that spot at Husky.
When you look at this schedule and when you look at this team early on, what's the first game that comes to mind that could define Alabama's season?
I think it's week 2 at Kentucky. No disrespect to East Carolina, but, Alabama under Kalen DeBoer has really struggled against inferior competition on the road. And so, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Michigan 2 years ago, and then even last year, Florida State, right? You struggled really badly against the Seminoles. You probably should have lost that South Carolina game, and they were much, much inferior compared to what Alabama was last season. No disrespect to the Gamecocks. But 3-4 wins doesn't cut it in the SEC. So I think that week 2 game at Kentucky, you should be able to dominate Kentucky. They don't have the money to bring in the type of talent that you need to succeed in the SEC in football, and they've got a first-time head coach. So what Alabama does in week 2 will be very, very telling, because, hey, are the struggles behind Kalen DeBoer, or is Alabama going to go out, win by 3 points, and now Alabama's in flux because you play Florida State at home. At home, Alabama's very, very good against these kind of inferior opponents. So you expect them to dominate Florida State at home in a revenge game. You get South Carolina at home, and then Mississippi State could be an up and down game. But really and truly, if you don't go out and dominate in week 2 against Kentucky, everybody's going to be questioning your team until you go play Georgia on October 10th.
Big season ahead for the Crimson Tide as they prepare for the 2026 season. Wyatt Fulton Tide 100.9 joins us to talk all things Alabama football. Wyatt, we'll be seeing you on Tide 100.9. Y'all follow the Deep South College Football podcast as well. They're live 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. every weekday.
1 to 2 Central Time every weekday. We've also got a YouTube page where I saw you hit 200 subscribers. Congratulations on that. We're on our road to 100 right now. So if you want to, head on over and subscribe to the Deep South College Football Show.
Wyatt, we appreciate your time, man. Have a great rest of the day.
Appreciate you, brother.